What's up? Welcome back to the booth here at the World Magic Championships. My name's Riley. I'm joined, of course, by Luis Scott Vargas. Second time today, we're going to go back at one Mulgeen and have a look at the standard format as it unfolds after Ixalan. I'll tell you what, some big names, Luis, in the feature match area. William Huey Jensen up against Mr. Magic himself, Reid Duke. There they are on your screen. And both of these guys, Luis, playing Temur Energy. These
are two of the three members of the Peach Garden Oath, as the two of them plus Owen Turtenwald are frequently referred to. And they tested together. They're not playing the literal exact same 75. They're like one card off, it looks like.
One card off. And I'll tell you what, it's super spicy card indeed. I think we have a sheltered thicket over a root-bound crag in one of the lists. So it's more or less the exact mirror match here between Jensen and Duke. Now, Luis, maybe as we see this game unfold, you can sort of shed a bit of a light onto this. What's it like going into such a huge high-stakes tournament, playing against someone who is quite literally your best mate?
It's always actually unfortunate. You don't really want to play against your friends until much later in the tournament. Playing in the finals is awesome. That's the dream. Playing in round 5, not so much. At least they're doing so at good records, where the second loss for Reid or the first loss for William would definitely not knock them out of contention. They're in very good shape regardless.
Interesting texture to this game as we saw the tournament, I should say, as we see Duke kick things off with an attune with Ether. The interesting texture to this tournament is because it's such a small field, only 24 players, we're going to see people make the finals with an X5 record, maybe?
I think that depending on how the front runners do, you're going to see maybe 1 or 2 people at 9 and 5 make the top 4. Sometimes it could shake out, so it's all people who are 10 and 4. But 9 and 5 is certainly a record that can make the top 4, though so it's by no means guaranteed.
So for those of viewers around the world who are accustomed to, say, GP coverage, where after your third loss, essentially that's it, all over Red Rover, or for many players even a second loss can put you in dire straits sometimes, depending on the size of the tournament. This is a very, very, very different beast.
Yeah, cutting 2 top 4 out of 24 is a more forgiving cut than a top 8 out of 2,000.
Jensen also kicking things off with an attune with Ether here. Looks like both these boys are getting underway with nice smooth manner, and Luis, you'll be very happy with their basic land choices.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of what Reid's got going on here. Oh, I tend to play with beta lands. I think it's pretty sweet, but honestly, as long as you put a little bit of care and thought into it, you can play a lot of different things, and it'll be awesome.
Rather than the old PV whatever's in the land box or at the bottom of his lunch box. Or
when Paulo's done sleeving the cards he's going to play, he then goes to the land box and sleeves up some of the land he's going to play too. So that is a method I can't get behind. But Paulo does have more Pro Tour top 8s than I do, so maybe I should be investing in a little land box technology.
He might be on some next level technology there, LSV. In any case, both of these players taking a level of pride in the presentation of their deck, which is, a supremely important part of the game. Many people enjoy that just as much as they do, cobbling together their decks and whatever else. And even at the pointiest end of competition, LSV, we still see this sort of stuff going on. Well, a virtuoso from Jensen.
Game 1 of the Temur Mirror is a lot about attrition. All these cards trade for other cards. Harness Lightning trades for Whirler Virtuoso. Whirler leaving a couple energy behind. Glorybringer takes out a creature. Chandra takes out a creature. The reverse can happen. And really it's going to be, who has the last threat left standing, who can pick up the most 2-for-1s over the course of the game.
What I'm really keen on here, Luis, is the fact that, in the last round we saw Temur Energy go up against blue-based control, and we got a bit of a sort of, a masterclass, really, from the best players in the world about how that matchup shakes out. Now we're seeing this nearly 74 card mirror between these two players, and we're going to get a really good idea of, as you say, the characteristics of this matchup. And you're saying that it's about attrition.
It is. Neither of these players has a very clean way to just end the game, because all the threats are answerable by other answers. Bristling Hydra is maybe the hardest to answer individually, but the ground can get crowded as both players just have access to cards like Bristling Hydra.
Well, here is the Bristling Hydra, going to bristle away here, as Glorybringer has taken already to the skies. See Reid Duke unsure as to which direction he's tapping his permanents in. Seems to have settled to the left here for the Glorybringer, rather confusingly. Now his hand's got an interesting one here with Commit to Memory. Both these players playing one of these in the main.
Yep. They're playing one copy of Commit to Memory because of its flexibility. It acts as a counterspell in a control battle against aggressive or mid-range deck. It acts as permanent removal, and every now and then, you get to aftermath the memory and have each player draw 7. Though we're not that likely to see that.
Yeah, we're a long way away from the trip down memory lane today. You would have to say. So here's Mr. Magic after another attune with Ether. Certainly very, very attuned here, fetching out a beautiful looking mountain there. We'll see what the follow-up play here from Duke is. How worried is he about this Bristling Hydra? As you said, it can be a problem.
Bristling Hydra is the most resilient threat among the decks because everything else does die to something like Harness Lightning. But Bristling Hydra can be blocked by ground creatures, and it's possible that Reid's going to be able to put together enough power and toughness to battle it. Though, as it stands right now, that Hydra actually gives William a pretty significant advantage, even though he was set back by the Glorybringer initially.
One interesting thing to consider, you talked about the sort of leftover energy having a big impact on the game going long. Bristling Hydra gets +1/+1 counters at a much worse rate than Long Tusk Cub. So those two creatures, when they're contending with one another, it's a really delicate dance between the two of them.
The Cub does grow more powerful based on energy than Hydra does because, as you said, it only costs 2 energy instead of 3. But a card like Harness Lightning is frequently going to take down Long Tusk Cub, or even something like Magma Spray threatens the Cub depending on the situation. So William's got some options here. The most rewarding one is just to slam Glorybringer and kill the Long Tusk Cub. The problem is that bricks very hard against something like Harness Lightning, which Reid actually does have in hand. So the more conservative line would be to leave up Harness Lightning for the Glorybringer because both players know in game 1 there's no counter spells besides that one copy of Commit to Memory that can stop Harness Lightning. Though both players are playing Essence Scatter. This is a bit of their technology that they found to be very effective.
2 copies of Essence Scatter in the main for both of these players. So they are looking to hedge their bets a little bit rather than confining all of their counter magic to the board here. And I have to say I like it, especially against this field.
Sure.
Now Jensen playing rather conservatively with the Rogue Refiner being deployed here. And Duke is sitting on a hand full of interaction, Magma Spray, Abrade, Harness Lightning, in addition to that Commit to Memory. So he'll be looking to preserve his board presence.
For my attack.
Because Reid is slightly ahead here, he's going to get the advantage of casting Commit. That card is very, very good when you already have the lead.
Just snap it off here.
By doing so, by casting Commit here, he does also get to exert Glorybringer and kill the Rogue Refiner. It's going to be pretty hard to pass up that bit of value.
Not going to be too hard to commit to that line of play, Luis.
Well, we'll see. Reid is not decided yet.
I'm so sorry. I was stepping all over. I was absolutely chomping your flavor there. I'll leave that to you. Leave that to the expert here. So Duke now, fiddly farting around with his mana.
So ultimately, I do think he is going to cast Commit to Memory, but he was deciding whether he wanted to potentially save that for whatever Huey plays next turn.
And there is the commit. So it's going to keep the Glorybringer around to tussle for at least one more turn. And an attack now with the Long Tusk Cub. And Duke's looking to pump up the jam here with the Cub as well, Luis.
She take 11
Wow.
9 damage. Damage 7.
And by going all in on the Cub, Duke just reduces William's life total the most possible, which puts William vulnerable to follow-up copies of Glorybringer, potentially Chandra's, depending on what else Reid can muster.
So Jensen, you can see in his hand, a bit of interaction, a couple of very potent threats in the form of Glorybringer as well. And
You have 3 more cards?
I mean, right now, those Glorybringers, they're not going to dominate the board in the way that there aren't the small creatures for them to pick off here.
So Hydra, a very hard to kill threat, but against that Cub, it is outmatched. So William's got a lot of cards he has to answer right now.
It is going to be Glorybringer coming down here, swooping in from the skies as a 4/4 hasty beater. It's up to Duke now to decide how he's going to respond to this. Of course, as we saw, Duke with a hand full of interaction here. Harness Lightning is an answer to the Glorybringer.
And this puts William in a very tough spot because he's tapping out here for a Glorybringer that Reid can answer at a very reduced cost. It is going to be very difficult to get back into this game.
That's a tidy trade here for Duke because he's actually been able to answer 2 of Jensen's cards in the one turn. So trading up on mana with the Harness Lightning there, in addition, of course, to that commit which protected his Glorybringer beforehand. That's big. Those are big swingy plays for Duke here. He's putting his snoot firmly ahead here as the game continues.
So a bunch of targeted removal for Duke. He can get up to 5 energy off casting Confiscation Coup, which makes his Long Tusk Cub into a 7/7. Currently, the Bristling Hydra can be pumped 3 times and become a 7/6. So Reid is really looking to see how he can triumph in this combat, because Jensen is forced to block Long Tusk Cub if Reid casts something like Confiscation Coup pre-combat.
Now, Confiscation Coup has sort of been the latest and greatest out of the sideboards of these Temur decks because it is such a trump in the mirror. And coming into this tournament, both players are playing one in the main. Is that a metagame call, or do you think that this is something that we could see moving forward?
Depending on the texture of the threats in opposing decks, Confiscation Coup gains a lot of value, and these players clearly expected to see a lot of Temur mirrors, particularly Scarab Gods, where Confiscation Coup really shines.
Can be just bonkers in these creature-based matchups. Look at this, William Jensen. Got the head in the hands here, which is not necessarily a sign that he's down on the rope. So, you know, you can see him about to finish a game and still clutching his head like it's about to fall off. Him and John Finkel, it's very much an old school move, I would say.
Yeah, these players both seem to favor doing that whenever they have a second to think.
Duke instead going for the hands together in front of the chin there. Also strong posture from him. This man, I tell you what, he's hungry for victory. One of the most honourable foes you'll find in this game here, and certainly a man who commands respect up and down any battlefield he graces. And a bright thing still ahead for him, you would say, Luis.
Yeah, Reid has been a premier level player for a number of years now, and I do not expect that to change anytime soon.
Glorybringer number 2 now for William Jensen. He liked it the first time so much, he's going to go for it once more. Now Duke this time, what's he looking at as in wave of response?
A Braid plus Magma Spray to prevent the Glorybringer from attacking, because both players are intimately familiar with the opposing deck list here, and Reid knows that if William has a Magma Spray in hand and gets to attack, then that Glorybringer will take out the Long Tusk Cub.
And how likely is Duke to have Jensen on Magma Spray, given the fact that both players do know the list, they've seen how this game's played?
Apparently not very likely. I believe he's letting Jensen attack here.
Oh, wow. All right. Because you would think, I mean, yeah, Long Tusk Cub, 6/6, it's going to be safe from the Dragon's fiery breath. But of course, something important to note here, the Glorybringers can't knock each other out of the sky. Yeah,
it is non-Dragon, so otherwise this would have been a much easier play for Reid. He would have had to stop the Glorybringer. Jensen now has to decide whether he wants to die in 2 turns to Reid's Glorybringer or just go for taking out Long Tusk Cub by attacking with both. But Jensen does win that race.
An all-out attack here, and we are going to see the Exert trigger happening to take this Long Tusk Cub down a peg. And, of course, this 5/5 will die to the Magma Spray if Duke doesn't have anything to say about it. And based on how his hand's looking, he doesn't have a response to save it as yet.
No, this actually puts Reid in an awkward spot where he's losing the race now. And so he might even be forced to Magma Spray and Abrade the Glorybringer after attacks, which is not a pleasant place to be, but given what's happening right now, he may be forced into it.
So he may be forced into the sort of 2-for-1 on himself here, just to deal with his 4/4. But as you mentioned, I mean, it is something that is a little bit awkward after the attack's already happened. Well, Jensen's going to put some further pressure on now with this Bristling Hydra. It's going to go up once more. You can hear both players over the floor mics here. One of the characteristic aspects of the way that Duke and Jensen play is very, very clear communication all times.
Yeah, I expect there to be no misunderstandings as to what is happening with either player. I think we might see it. I think we might see Glorybringer get taken down post-attacks.
Looks like it's going to be that way here with Duke committing to it. And Abrade, yep. And follow that up with a Magma Spray.
Take 6. Yep. So 10 to 7. Yep. Your turn.
So at this point, Reid is winning the race. He gets to untap with Glorybringer, hit Jensen down to 3, and then that Hydra not enough to deal lethal next turn.
Hydra does still have 3 energy waiting in the chamber there, so it can be pumped up. And of course, hexproof, once again, very important in the face of cards like Duke's Confiscation Coup. Didn't get a good look at the card that Duke drew here, playing him quite close to his chest here, the American. He's 28 years of age. This guy, of course, has already had an absolutely stellar career. And as we mentioned, more on the way for him. Jensen, he's senior in years and in results so far, but you would think that Duke won't be too long before he's caught up. These guys, as we mentioned, testing partners, best mates, and GP finalists last week.
Yep, at Providence, again, alongside Owen Turtenwald.
Servant of the Conduit after Glorybringer knocks Jensen down to 3, so he's going to have to find something. A Harnessed Lightning here, Luis. What does that mean?
Well, now that Jensen has an answer to Glorybringer with Essence Scatter in hand, this game has gotten very, very close. I think that Jensen is actually ahead here because he's able to kill Glorybringer, his Hydra will win the race against Servant of the Conduit, even just barely, because Jensen is at 3. But Reid has no good answer to Bristling Hydra. It is one of the hardest to stop threats in this matchup. And Essence Scatter in hand means that so many of Reid's draws are actually dead.
Yeah, I mean, you think, yeah, just peel a fresh Glorybringer off the top and wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, that's going to be it here. But something that's becoming increasingly apparent to me here, Luis, is the fact that these lists seem tuned to beat the mirror. Essence Scatter, Confiscation Coup, as you mentioned, Commit to Memory. These blue cards in the main, they really change the texture of this mirror match.
They do, and these players expected a lot of Team Ramirez. Maybe not the one within their own team. That wasn't what they were preparing for, but they weren't too far off the mark. There are a fair amount of Teamer decks in the field today.
As we did mention earlier, Jensen and Duke, teammates, best mates, testing partners, whatever else, are playing, I think it's 74 card mirror here between the two of them.
Reid actually has an extra Confiscation Coup. That looks like the most substantial difference.
73 card mirror, excuse me.
But regardless, you know, the way the matchup plays does not fundamentally change.
So Jensen, as expected, firing off this Harness Lightning to knock the dragon out of the sky. Heads into the graveyard, the 4-4, not going to be taking any more names this time around. And now it's all about the Bristling Hydra. You mentioned, Luis, that it's a very, very hard to answer threat once it hits the battlefield, and Duke forced a chump block here.
And there's very few cards that Duke can top deck that'll get him out of this. Another Glorybringer, that would do it. Even a Bristling Hydra would not quite be enough to... Well, actually, a Bristling Hydra would not quite be enough to trade because of the excess energy that William has, but I don't think Reid is got there. He drew a forest. He's going to be forced to cast Confiscation Coup and hope that William doesn't... Oh, no, he's got Memory. So he's going to have both players draw 7 cards and somehow hope his 2 mana is enough to outmatch the cards that Huey has.
Find a Diabolic Edict in there somehow.
Reid's best play now is to play a Servant of the Conduit or Long Tusk Cope and hope somehow that with the 8 mana and 7 new cards plus his draw step, William doesn't find an answer. This is a desperation Memory at the very best.
Well, we did say that there was the outside chance that we would see Memory cast, and Reid Duke has fulfilled on that fantasy for us all here. But as you mentioned, Luis, I mean, the power of a draw 7 is being then able to deploy the cards immediately that you draw. And right now, I mean, Duke with 2 mana, he's going to shift back to Jensen, who has a fresh grip, and that's going to be very confronting, very hard for the younger man to overcome here. Not to mention the massive Bristling Hydra has already got a contender.
Basically, Reid wants them both to shuffle and draw 7 before they go to the next game, shuffle and draw 7.
Yeah, right, okay. Bit of practice, yeah. Get them nice and limber for game 2. Okay, both players.
The funny thing is, William didn't actually find an answer to that Servant of the Conduit. The game might continue.
So with 8 cards in hand with William Jensen, he's got a lot of creatures here, so he can flood the battlefield. Now, we're going to get a good look at Jensen and Duke's hand once that is all updated, but I can see, yeah, a lot of sort of dirtle going on there with Attune with Ethers and Rogue Refiners.
William does have a Rogue Refiner. He does get to look at another card, and he can even attune first to clear out his deck a little bit if he wants. But yeah, Reid's not dead instantly, so this game could go on.
Wow, prolonged stuff from Reid Duke. I mean, we've seen this is classic stuff from him. He never concedes. He always makes his opponent have it and plays to the till the final whistle here. And I mean, pigs might fly. We might see something very special here for Reid Duke after that commit to memory. Just as you drew it up, Luis, we will see a bit of deck thinning going on here from William Jensen.
I think the way his mana works out, William is probably going to cast 1 of the attunes, so that way he can cast Rogue Refiner, and if he misses, followed up with Whirler Virtuoso and Long Tusk Cup, which, again, should still put him in a really good spot to win this game, but that's better than just conceding, so Reid is going to continue to play on.
So we're not seeing anything in the way of mass removal here, and Duke is certainly not attempting to get more information out of William Jensen as the players know each other's lists, not only because they're testing partners, but also because players now, it's round 2, all of the players have access to all of each other's deck lists.
And the funny thing is that actually changes the metagame some, where like a player like Shota Yasuoka, who has a ton of 1-ofs in his deck, gains a significant advantage. Oh, there we go.
Okay, we found it here with the Harness Lightning, and that is going to be enough for Reid Duke to pack things up and go to game number 2 here. William Jensen getting up and about in the first game, and these highly tuned, very, very precisely configured decks for the mirror here. It's ultimately triumphed on the side of William Jensen. Well done to him. We'll be back with round number 5 continuing. Game number 2 between Duke and Jensen coming your way. We've got to go to a break. Stick around. We'll see you on the other side of this.
Looking for a challenge? Magic Online offers monthly limited and constructed events, which lead to the yearly Magic Online Championship. Download Magic Online at mtgo.com and start earning the points you need to enter.
And welcome back to live coverage of Magic, the World Championship, coming live from your way from Boston. Tim Willoughby's on the ground with some results from round number 5. What's going on down there, Tim?
Well, thank you, Riley. There's been a whole host of games falling all throughout our feature match area. We've got a lot of control on red decks going on here. And we've seen, well, sometimes it works out the red decks simply get the jump on your control. If you're able to get underneath that counter magic, then you can get a few wins under your belt fairly quick and easy. That's what Christian Calcano did in his game 1. Those sandblacks squared that one up. We're going to get a chance to see some of their game 3 soon enough. Meanwhile, on the other side of things, we've got Jerry Thompson up against Donald Smith, and Donald Smith able to pick up the game win there for game 1. They're in their game 2, and then this match that you can see right here, we've got Temur control in the hands of Brad Nelson. He's in his game 3 against Kelvin Chu. Kelvin trying to find a way with control. Back to you in the booth.
Thanks, Tim. Riley Knight in the booth alongside Luis Scott Vargas. Luis, great to have your company as we get underway with game number 2 now between William Huey Jensen and Reid Duke. We saw Jensen take out game number 1. Both of these players playing near identical lists, Luis. I mean, what are both of these players going to be prioritizing now that we're in sideboard games?
Sideboarding doesn't change as much here as it does in the Temur against Blue-Black or Grixis Control matchup, but both players get some upgrades. They can go big, they can have more copies of Confiscation Coup, Glimmer of Genius, Torrential Gearhulk, some negates, and they can it really just turns into, you know, even more of an attrition battle as there are fewer cards that, you know, are low impact and a lot more cards that are haymakers.
Looks like Jensen's going to have to go down to the principal's office and take 6 of the best here because he's not happy with his opening hand. Duke, on the other hand, seems to be content with the 7 that he's opened with here. Now, Luis, you've talked about attrition. You've talked about the fact that in sideboard games, you know, we have higher impact cards. Does that necessarily mean that the matches kind of slow down, or can we still have these ferocious 1, 2, 2, 3, 4 curve outs from Temur?
The curve threat is very real still. Long Tusk Cub is one of the best cards for running away with a game unopposed. And some of these threats are so good that if they resolve, they'll just win the game, you know, within a few turns too. So these games don't necessarily have to be all that drawn out. Game 1 was a pretty long battle.
Well, we'll see how things go now with Jensen looking at his 6. He seems content with it, going to scry and keep it on the top. A good start for him. And Duke has taken us off to the races with Root-Bound Crag. We're going to move on now and see how things develop in the opening turns. Spy Bluff Canal for Duke. And we're going to attune. We're going to attune here. So certainly not coming out of the gates like a greyhound here, Duke. Just mucking around, getting his mana in order. One of the strengths of the Temur deck, Luis, is, as you mentioned, the fact that they still can get out to such aggressive starts. But even if they don't, they're by no means out of the out of the contention.
This deck plays well early, plays well in the mid game, and actually plays well in the late game. That is why it is one of the most popular decks in Standard.
Servant of the Conduit's going to juice up Jensen's mana here. Could be looking to resolve an early threat a bit ahead of time. Now Duke has a long tusk cupboard. I can see he's holding what looks like a Rogue Refiner as well here.
And Rogue Refiner, one of the better cards in the mirror. In fact, it's just one of your better cards in general. The player who resolves more Rogue Refiners is probably going to end up doing all right for themselves.
Such an innocuous card, but it really does perform a very, very important role.
Getting an extra card is huge. Getting 2 energy really does add up and matters a lot in the middle of the game. So Rogue Refiner kind of covers all the bases you want to cover.
Yeah, I mean, Duke with 5 energy already. He hasn't got a single card that actually, uses energy in any great quantities apart from the Ether Hub, but this is going to set him up well with stuff like Bristling Hydra, but it's Jensen with the first Bristling Hydra here.
And a turn 3 Bristling Hydra into a tapped out opponent is exactly how you want to start, because both players are well aware of Essence Scatter and the threat it represents.
Now Duke has got a Bristling Hydra of his own.
And because Hydra's a 4-3, because it starts with slightly more power than toughness, Hydras do a pretty good job of taking each other out. They aren't very good at bouncing off each other.
Now we see an attack with the Rogue Refiner here. That might raise some eyebrows given that the Hydra could have potentially blocked, but Jensen obviously playing around the red removal spells here.
The funny thing about that is Reid didn't actually have a Harness Lightning in hand, and Jensen could have blocked, pumped the Hydra, and just snapped off the Rogue Refiner. But that's a very, very risky block to make, and not one I would expect Jensen to make, which Reid knows, which is why he attacked into it.
He certainly had the read on Jensen there as we see the Hydra come in and block with Duke. Can you imagine these two are just going to trade off against each other? As you mentioned, Louise, higher power, lower toughness means that they do often knock each other out of the ring. Rogue Refiner. And Jensen here is going to keep Essence Scatter up by the look of things. That's tidy.
And that works out fairly well for Jensen. One way Reid can get around that is he can play around Essence Scatter and not worry about negate. He could just play his Chandra Torch of Defiance if he so chose.
And the Torturino is going to do a fair bit of work here. Can obviously start to dominate the board or provide a bit of extra advantage for Duke going long, and able to defend it off the back of the Rogue Refiner that's already in play. Is he worried about negate, however, from Jensen? I mean, are you bringing that in against the confiscation coups and that sort of thing?
I don't know how these players board, because the negate does seem like it has some utility here, but on the other hand, this is a very creature-based matchup. But given that Reid's attacking with Rogue Refiner, it seems like he's going to opt not to play Chandra, because Chandra would necessitate wanting to stay back on defense, is my guess.
5 mana here from Duke, and we're going to see it is a confiscation coup on the Servant of the Conduit. That's an interesting play here from Duke. It's not the most intuitive one you would think. What's going on there, Louise? Break it down for us.
So Reid has decided he doesn't want to cast something into Essence Scatter, because Essence Scatter for sure is one of the better cards in the matchup, and both players will have both their copies in. So he wants to play something expensive, and by playing Confiscation Coup first, it limits what Jensen can play, and makes it a lot harder for Jensen to have a good follow-up.
Wow, and look at this. Jensen is abrading his own servant. Rather than give it over to Duke, he's like the Moscow. He's got the people in Moscow in the 13th century burning their city to the ground rather than letting it fall in the hands of the Poles. And I mean, a straight-up 2-for-1 for Duke. He's going to be happy with that.
Yeah, that worked out very well for Reid, and William was able to stop Reid from gaining any energy by killing it in response, which is why he did it in that sequencing. But that was still, like I said, a clean 2-for-1 for Reid, and it even cost William an energy. He had to use Servant of the Conduit. Yeah,
so tidy stuff from Duke. That's a pretty nice way for him to leverage some advantage over Jensen, who is again sitting on this counter magic and hasn't done a lot with it. If Duke can navigate these waters, find his way around the counter magic that Jensen is bringing to bear, he's going to put himself in a good position. But between Essence Scatter and Supreme Will, I mean, Jensen, he's going to tussle hard.
The difference is Jensen doesn't have anything in play right now. Last time, if Reid had his turn 5 play or his turn 4 play countered, then Jensen would have had 2 creatures to Reid's 1 and be in very good shape. Jensen doesn't have that advantage anymore.
Looks like Supreme Will here is going to counter this Chandra Torch of Defiance. But a follow-up play here for Duke. Well, that's also going against Essence Scattered, so just straight up 1-for-1s here against from Jensen and Duke. And both of these players now in a position to, I don't know, try to break this wide open here.
Well, one reason Jensen is not far ahead is that he only actually has 1 mountain. He can't cast that Glorybringer. So if he could have cast Glorybringer, he would have let Longtusk Cub potentially resolve, though I guess with 7 energy he still would have countered it. Either way, Jensen can't get Glorybringer onto the board, which leaves him with essentially no playable cards against Reid's hand of Bristling Hydra and Confiscation Coup, which puts Jensen in a lot of trouble.
We saw just how devastating Bristling Hydra can be in this matchup in the previous game, and right now Jensen really having the screws turned on him by Reid Duke. As Duke gets to untap with a Hydra in play, he's still got a couple of cards in hand. Jensen holding a couple of Stone Cold Blankarinos by the look of things, punished that his mana hasn't developed in the way that he would have hoped here, Luis.
And drawing Negate when you're behind is not where you want to be, because Negate's a great card, one of the best when you have a board presence, but when you're facing down a Bristling Hydra, then Negate does not do a whole lot for you.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Legacy players would know that Daze is a lot better when you've got a flipped Elf to defend, you know, with something like that. And I mean, yeah, Jensen is not in a position to tempo Duke out here or anything. He's staring at cards that don't do a whole lot. Duke now with 5 mana. Oh dear.
Duke is just going big here.
Oh dear, look at this.
He's attempting to cast Confiscation Coup strictly for 4 energy.
On his own Bristling Hydra. I never thought I'd see the day, but Jensen is going to sort of snap off this negate all the same. I mean, Duke's looking to power up that energy reserve of his. Just really stamp his authority on that Bristling Hydra. This is mine, he's saying. I mean, is he he's looking to end the game quickly here?
He's got an excess of energy, and he wants to utilize it to put William on as short a clock as he can manage.
Tune with Ether here, and this means Jensen should be able to deploy his Glorybringer here. 2 mountains in his deck. He's found his second one. He's chosen wisely.
And Glorybringer is going to come out here and start attacking Reid, but just like we saw last game, except on the other side, Bristling Hydra really hard to stop.
So, Glory has been brought here, and Duke goes down to 16. Luis, I do want to explore this Confiscation Coup play before. I mean, are we getting into the territory of greed here from Duke, or is that just sensible good magic?
Had he resolved the coup, he would have been able to put William on the 2-turn clock and have enough protection to make sure his Hydra lives. So that was the goal behind that card.
So we're looking at that as a 5 mana, very slow kind of pump spell then?
Essentially, yeah. It gave the Hydra +1/+1 counter. That was really all it did.
Well, anyway, you slice it. Duke is going to get up and about in game number 2. These guys are going to go to a 3rd game as well, as they split the first 2 between them. Duke and Jensen, best mates, testing partners, as we've said. 2/3 of the Peach Garden Oath on your screen. And they're going to have to think long and hard about how they want to approach game number 3. As we look at their sideboards, a lot of one-offs: a Braid, Aethersphere Harvester, Chandra's Defeat, Confiscation Coup, Chandra herself, Glimmer of Genius, and Supreme Will, in addition to Appetite for the Unnatural, Negate, and Torrential Gearhulk 2, 4, and 2, respectively. Cards that are popping off for you here, Luis?
Some number of negates. I think both players are going to want some negates in their deck to stop Confiscation Coup, to stop Chandra, and to stop Essence Scatter. But you can't overload on them. You don't want to risk drawing a hand of like 2 to 3 negates over the course of the game and, you know, die to Bristling Hydra, Longtusk Cub, and Glorybringer. Chandra Torch of Defiance does quite well for herself in this matchup, and Torrential Gearhulk seems like a good way. If you're trading all these cards and getting to 6 or 7 mana regularly, Gearhulk is what you want.
Well, we'll be able to check in with the results of the sideboarding in game number 3 between Jensen and Duke. We don't want to miss a moment of that. But in the meantime, we can now go and have a look at what's going on with Brad Nelson and Kelvin Chu. Now, these players, of course, have already got through game number 1. Looks like Nelson took out the first game here, which is a good position for him to be in, considering what Chu's playing.
And Chu is playing blue-black control here. And it looks like he's using a Field of Ruin, though not for a whole lot of value. He's downgrading a Rootbound Crag into a mountain.
Now, Field of Ruin is a card that I can see a lot of people have hedged on. I mean, Samuel Black's playing 3 copies of it. It's popped up in deck lists everywhere. What are people worried about? Are they worried about these flip lands?
Yeah, Azcanta, the Sunken Ruin, is by far the most common card to destroy with it. But in this particular case, it's activating Revolt for Fatal Push here.
Ah, very tidy. That makes a lot more sense now as we see a pretty interesting activation of Field of Ruin there.
And it looks like Brad in position to defeat potentially another control deck, though. Glorybringer there, it looks like it's getting potentially locked down by.
Yeah, I mean, if you count all the controls.
Ether Meltdown there.
Yeah, Chu has 2 copies of Ether Meltdown in the main deck.
Well, Shoda and
And you would think Ether Meltdown, I mean, not a great card against Glorybringer, but when you don't really care about the 4 damage being chucked around here, there, and everywhere, it effectively, you know, it's just blue Doublade,
It's an
basically.
effective kill spell. And
Yeah.
now here is where Search for Azcanta really shines, because Chu's has flipped it, and he's using it to find a Supreme Woe, which is then pulling him further and further ahead. If Brad keeps passing here, he's going to have a very hard time winning this game, because Chu's essentially drawing 2 cards a turn.
Choose cycles the Sensor here, draws a Glimmer of Genius. So, yeah, no end of cards in sight here for Kelvin Chu. He's going to keep them flowing right out of the fire hose. And with 5 mana, bang, here we go. Scarab God raising that Kopesh nice and high, despite the fact he doesn't have any arm muscles. Bit of a flavor violation there, but all the same, doesn't matter. He can do a lot of heavy lifting in this format, Luis.
Scarab God will end the game in about 1.5 turns or so. Maybe it might even just be game if Brad doesn't have an answer right away, because Scarab God can already bring back that Torrential Gearhulk that Kelvin helpfully moved to the top of his graveyard, which can then cast a Disallow and stop anything Brad plays. So Brad needs to already have like a negate in hand, and then top deck something like another Glorybringer.
Reminds you of the old Restoration Angel into Snapcaster Mage plays, when you bring in a creature, blink another creature, get more value here. Because as you mentioned, Kelvin Chu has a 4 mana 4/4 counter target spell, a 4 mana 4/4 Mystic Snake on a stick here.
And because of the Scarab God's drain ability, that puts Brad on even a faster clock. He gets to chump with Glorybringer for a turn, but Kelvin's going to reduce Brad's life total very, very quickly if this continues.
Well, with things working themselves out on the back table, we will head back to our original table. Jensen and Duke ready to go. You can see them all shuffled up, settled down for game number 3. So let's check back in with these 2 superstars on the front table. William Huey Jensen, Hall of Famer, 500,000 titles to his name, and Reid Duke, of course, a younger member of the Peach Garden Oath, of course, and no slouch himself. Look at that. He's won $250,000 playing this game in 2 Pro Tour top 8s. 2 of, I mean, that number's only going to go up.
Can only imagine so if Reid continues playing at the level he is playing at now.
Geez, look at that, a 60% win percentage at the Pro Tour as well. I mean, that, you know, that's no accident. This guy knows his way around high-level Magic. He's a very, very accomplished and confident player, and also just a great dude. Just a rock-solid dude, this guy. And Jensen as well, one of the veterans of the game, and someone that I know that many people around the world look up to. And certainly we'll be learning many lessons from these 2 as things continue. Duke now, he's going to attune with Ether.
Well, Reid kept a 1-land hand, so he has Botanical Sanctum to fuel this attune, get that mountain, but if Reid doesn't draw a land over the next 2 turns here, he's actually going to miss his 3rd land draw.
Long Tusk Cub here.
And it doesn't look like Reid has a 2-drop red removal spell either, so this is one of those games we talked about. This is where Long Tusk Cub can just run away with the entire game.
And Duke now with a mountain after the loosey-goosey one land keep here. And is Jensen now in a position to snowball off the back of this biologically improbable animal here? Don't know what evolutionary purpose these backwards-facing Cubs tusks serve, but in any case, they hit hard, they hit fast. It won't be small forever, indeed, as it says. Essence Scatter taking out the Rogue Refiner. Very pleased to see the M13 version of the Essence Scatter coming down.
2 energy, yep, go ahead.
The Servant of the Conduit, and look at this, no 3rd land for Duke.
Yeah, this is going to be really hard because Jensen is ahead on board and will continue to pull further and further ahead. He's even got like a Bristling Hydra to play this turn. And it's going to put Reid in a position where not only is he missing land drops, so he's not able to deploy his more expensive spells, he doesn't have the right combination of cheap spells to stop what Jensen is doing. Chandra's Defeat, for example, is a great sideboard card against Glorybringer and Chandra, but doesn't do a whole lot against Long Tusk Cub and Bristling Hydra.
Certainly not against either of the cards we've just seen deployed here by William Jensen and Duke. Look at this hand. I mean, not short on power level, but certainly short on resources to get him there. And Jensen is pulling a long way ahead here, you would have to say. Duke goes digging. He finds a land, so he's going to be able to deploy one of his Bristling Hydras should he so choose. But I mean, Is he sort of treading water here?
So Bristling Hydra can get up to 5 toughness here, but that is not big enough to survive combat with either of Jensen's creatures. If Jensen can draw an untapped 5th land and slam a Glorybringer, this game is just about over.
Jeez, all right, well, fortune certainly favoring Jensen now. It's another Glorybringer off the top. A Glimmer of Genius will keep the cards flowing for Jensen, however. Duke with his snoot just above water, trying to keep, desperately keep his game alive here. But punished for an early stumble, Luis.
Definitely. The fact that he basically had to answer what William was playing every turn. Essence Scatter answered Rogue Refiner, and then Hydra comes out a turn too late because of the missed land drop. That means that Reid's been on a back foot the whole time, and Long Tusk Cub is the most dangerous card in the matchup if there isn't an early, Magma Spray, a Braid, or Harness Lightning to deal with it.
Really is Feast or Famine, isn't it? I mean, an early red removal spell takes care of the Long Tusk Cub, no way, no how at the beginning, but I mean, even if it survives for long enough to get in for one hit.
Yeah, here we see the Cub. It has gotten in just once, and we'll see, or twice rather. We'll see if that ends up making the difference.
Glimmer of Genius here for Jensen, looking to hit those land drops, Scry 2, and he sees 2 lands on top.
And he's likely to keep one of them. Keeping both is certainly not necessary. He could get greedy and keep neither, but that is just asking for trouble when you have 2 excellent 5-drops in hand.
Yeah, it looks like he's going to keep one and then draw a Servant of the Conduit off the top as well. Looks like Duke has found another land. Spybluff Canal is going to come into play. Tapped, unfortunately for him, but he's still got threats to deploy. Another copy of Bristling Hydra in hand, but I mean, it really starts hotting up when we get to the 5-drop slot for Duke. He's got a Confiscation Coup, and that could be one way, depending on how Jensen navigates the next couple of turns, for Duke to get back in it here.
And Duke also does have Chandra's Defeat in hand, which is a very mana-efficient answer to Glorybringer. The downside for Duke, though, is that Jensen's going to get an unopposed Glorybringer, which takes out Servant of the Conduit, which that mana is critically necessary.
It's nasty business because, of course, if that Spybluff Canal had been untapped, then we'd be in business here. But unfortunately, yeah, it looks like Duke's Servant is going to have to pay the price here. So, exert the Glorybringer.
And again, both Hydras can go up to a 5 toughness maximum, 6 power. So once again, they're both going to take each other out.
Yeah, of course, with the fact that Duke's on 8 and Jensen's on 6 energy, those guys are going to just end up throwing a bunch of hamburgers at each other and end up with a mess all over the floor if they start deploying energy here. So both of them happy not to involve themselves in an energy war here. And it is now Rogue Refiner. Draw Duke a card.
So what Reid has done here could work out quite well for him. If he tempts William into playing another Glorybringer and then gets to Chandra's Defeat it, that's one way to kind of get the initiative back.
Well, Jensen here does have the second Glorybringer, of course, and does come down, enters the battlefield tapped, as you see, and look at that. That's a nice tempo play from Duke. You mentioned that, Luis. That's a way for him to give himself a bit of breathing room here. And an untapped land could mean that Confiscation Coup may come down, but no, it's Commit to Memory.
And Reid really feeling not having the 5th land here, because if he's able to steal Glorybringer, he could start rebuilding his board while weakening Williams, but casting something like Commit to Memory on a haste creature is just really not where you want to be.
Given the fact that Jensen does have, cards like Essence Scatter, cards like a Braid and what have you in hand, it means that he's going to be able to play this interactive game plan with Duke, who is under a lot of pressure on 7. And this, I think, has been a key to this deck and its success, is the fact that it's threats plus interaction. Back to Jensen now.
This play is a little risky in the face of cards like Negate and Supreme Will, but luckily for Reid, William does not have one of those. And by waiting, he delays the Glorybringer comeback an additional turn because it's 1 card deeper in William's library.
So, that's exactly right here as the Glorybringer goes down a couple of floors here. And a Rogue Refiner is going to dig Jensen a little bit closer to it as he draws an Essence Scatter off the top here. Duke needs an untapped land, and he needs it this turn.
Depending on how Jensen plays this, the untapped land could help quite a bit. And because Jensen did tap out and doesn't leave Essence Scatter up, this is the opportunity for Reid to play something like his own Glorybringer.
Looks like it was a Torrential Gearhawk off the top,
That is not what you want to see when you're looking for your 5th land.
No, when you're looking for a 5th land, you draw your 6-drop instead. Oh my goodness me.
2 energy in the card. Yep.
So, Duke now and still no land, and unable to cast the freshly drawn Attune with Ether as well, based on the mana issues that he's having. And Duke is just really having to pay the piper here. And I mean, this isn't something that happens often, Luis. The Temur Energy deck is very consistent, but when it stumbles, I mean, it's just backbreaking.
Yeah, and this is going to be really hard, especially since William should know the deck list and know that there's only one Chandra's defeat. So he knows that tapping out for Glorybringer here is going to be successful. He can take out one of the Rogue Refiners. The other Rogue Refiner blocks William's Rogue Refiner, and then Reid falls to 1 life against a board of Servant of the Conduit and an Exerted Glorybringer.
So Glorybringer comes in again and Exerted, just like you said, Luis. Looks like you can you see just a few seconds into the future, my man. Servant of the Conduit gets across as well. Duke's down to 1. Big draw for him. Servant of the Conduit, and you would think that Jensen now, with the keys to this particular car, drive down into the sunset away with this game here, protecting an undefeated record. Let's talk about that quickly here.
It looks like Jensen will be the last. He's already the last undefeated, and by winning this, he pulls, you know, again, just like a full win ahead of most of the field, and that gets more and more powerful. If you could start the tournament at something like 6-1, even if he splits the last 2 rounds, that puts him in fantastic shape to make the top 4.
I mean, we saw the absolute dominance of Seth Manfield a year or 2 ago when he was, you know, uncontested for nearly all of the tournament, and it put him in such a good position to really, you know, well, end up in the winner's seat at the end of the tournament. And I mean, Jensen will be very happy with such a strong start, and if he manages to go 5-0 here, I mean, geez, it's all coming up Jensen, huh? Glorybringer, of course, not untapping. Can't seal the deal just yet. Jensen checks in with the top of his library. He's got a nice full grip. Some good interaction. Of course, these burn spells don't go upstairs. Otherwise, Duke could be deader than Disco here. Servant of the Conduit, another lethal attacker.
And the combination of Essence Scatter and Abrade means that William has a lot of answers for what Reid could put up. Though, if Reid steals the Glorybringer with Confiscation Coup, Jensen doesn't actually have a way to stop that. What he can do is, if Reid doesn't also have a way to kill his own Servant of the Conduit, he gets to Abrade Reid's Servant of the Conduit, attack for the final 2 points of damage with his own.
So Jensen does seem to have this on lock. I mean, Duke just needed that untapped land. We are going to see a 5-drop here. It is going to be Confiscation Coup, and Jensen doesn't have the he shrug. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. He's not bothered. So gains control of the Glorybringer, but as you mentioned, Luis, we're going to see an Abrade lock this up for Jensen on the Servant here. And an attack from Jensen's going to seal the deal. Reid Duke goes down, and Luis Scott Vargas. We have William Huey Jensen at 5-0 at the end of round number 5. Truly impressive stuff from this master.
Yep, and once again, he's the last feature match to wrap up, and once again, he emerges victorious.
Yeah, I mean, it's just incredible, incredible poise and precision from him, as we've seen him absolutely dominate the feature match area so far. I mean, this is the 3rd or 4th or 5th time he's been featured, and it won't be the last for this tournament.
Certainly not.
Absolutely. We'll see plenty more standard action coming your way from the feature match area before the end of our day. 2 more rounds of standard coming your way. Riley Knight and Luis Scott Vargas saying goodbye for now. Stick around, because more stuff is coming your way from Boston right after this.